Welcome to another broadcast of Truth Be Told, where we believe in experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and we have an exciting show for you because we have the one and only, the alien hunter. Yes, that's right. We have Derrel Sims with us tonight. We're going to have a great discussion as he was an alien abductee, and so was his son, which started his journey of seeking the truth and getting involved into the life of ufology. His latest release, titled UFO Magazine India, Volume 2, the first UFO magazine of India. Excited to talk about that. We're going to find out why ancient aliens theory is wrong. Why? Well, Derrel's going to talk about that today. He is a certified master hypnotherapist. He's an international speaker, licensed private investigator in the state of Texas, and researcher of alleged human-alien encounters. Listen, I can't wait to talk to Derrel Sims because I have a feeling this is going to be a damn good show. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, where we believe in experience becomes truth, the alien hunter, Derrel Sims. I don't think you're ready for that. Derrel, how you doing, sir?
Very good, sir. Great to be here.
This is great. Hey, listen, I did say this is going to be a damn good show because even just before, you're one of those guys that's down to earth, and you believe what your research, and you're not just making this shit up because just to get people going. You really have experienced this. How many years? What, 30, over 35 years of
38 years.
38 years. Man, I wasn't even born yet. Just kidding. But how we get started with my show is to get people to know who you are. Tell us a little bit about where you were born and when was your first abduction, because I know that was where you really got started in your journey.
Well, first of all, let me give you a tiny bit of history about me in the past.
Sure.
I bring to the UFO phenomena an investigative background. I'm a former military police officer. I volunteered during the Vietnam War. I quit college literally and joined for the war effort, and spent 2 years in Central Intelligence Agency in covert operations. So
Wow.
I came out as a senior military police officer with also a background in the intelligence community. And on top of that, I've been a private investigator for the last 38 years. And that's in this great state of Texas, which has only 49 counties, as everyone knows. New York, California, Pennsylvania, and a few other little counties, and a couple of islands, Hawaii or something else.
Right.
So basically, investigations is where my business is at. I don't really care what I or other people believe. What I do care about is what I can prove.
Right.
And if I can substantiate that with a reasonable proof, a degree of proof in a forensic setting, forensic meaning a public forum, something that I'm not afraid for people to look at my evidence, then I'm happy with that. That's number one. Where I actually grew up, and I was born in Weatherford, Texas. Of course, Texas is where everybody's supposed to have been born, and most people got here a little late. And, came from but I'm teasing, of course.
Yeah,
but the fact is that we moved to we moved to Midland, Texas, and at 1005 South K Street, where we lived. And I was about 5 years old, I guess, and just a little tight. Hard to remember exactly how old I was, but I know I was real little. And I was in my room one night, asleep, and Mom had just tucked me in. It was very cold. And we have a little tiny house, and I had my own little room. My sister had her little room, and there was someone in my room. And I woke up. I opened my eyes like, whoa, I can't figure out when is this little man in my room? And there was a little guy in my room. He was tall for me because he was bigger than I was, skinny, spindly, pure white, not gray, but pure white. And he had, and then I thought to myself, well, he's going to bump into the wall. He's walking toward the wall. I didn't know he went through it.
Wow.
He was leaving. The event is over, in effect. So what happened was when I thought that, he instantly turned around and apparently heard me thinking it. And he said, and I heard him say mentally, it's awake. And when he turned around, I saw these two objects, I'm going to hold them up for your audience here.
We can see it.
That was an inch and a half across each. They were perfectly round black eyes. They were not the Hollywood version, the wraparound lenses you see on TV and so on. These were perfectly round. And since I'd never seen any of these guys, didn't know what they were or who it was, I didn't have a clue. But when he turned around, I noticed something very strange. First of all, he didn't have any clothes on. And of course, little kids tend to notice things that others may not necessarily
That's true.
notice right off the bat. He didn't have a TT and he didn't have a belly button. Now, if you don't have genitalia, you don't procreate.
Right.
So I figured that out very early. And the second thing I noticed, he didn't have a belly button, and I did, which meant that I was born and he wasn't.
Wow.
So the question is, even at age 4, if you ask the right questions, you will get some good answers. Where's his belly button and where's his genitalia? He doesn't have one, and the quote unquote beings that we've been seeing for the most part, the reptile, the mantis, the humanoid, the Bigfoot, and so on, these are nothing but 7 models. I use the word model, not alien races.
Right.
Models that have been, the DNA comes from here, in my opinion. If you want to create a 7-foot praying mantis, where would you get praying mantis DNA? Probably not Saturn.
Right.
Probably, probably Earth. Where are you going to get reptile DNA? Well, that's you probably can't get it at Zeta Reticuli. Where's all this DNA come from? Every bit of the DNA we've been looking at seems to be located right here on the cosmic Walmart.
Are we just like a big test?
Right on planet Earth.
Are we just like a big test tube here of?
Well, what it was that whoever created, made, hatched, or cloned and manufactured these guys, they took the DNA from here, in my opinion, took it out somewhere else, worked on it, reestablished it, and introduced these guys as quote unquote aliens from other worlds.
So why do you think? And we'll get back to the abduction itself, but why do you think they would even be interested in recreating a reptilian or anything other than just like a humanoid? Because at least we think humans are the most intelligent creature on this planet. Why would they even want to create anything from another DNA on this planet?
Well, the answer to that is falls into one of two categories. Sitchin has a view that many people adhere to, ancient aliens and others pretty much adhere to the view that one of two things happened, according to most people who get that far in the UFO phenomena. Right. That is to question, where do they come from? Who are they? The big questions, really. Not do they exist? Of course they exist. I mean, there it is. But the Sitchin's view is basically that the Anunnaki, the ones from up there, from the heavens down they came, and so on. Right. Well, that's not a correct rendering of the Sumerian, and it's not a correct rendering of the ancient Hebrew language. When I went to a Sumerian scholar, a different one, who actually did quote it correct, I said, why is it that he either can't quote the Hebrew and ancient Sumerian correctly, or he doesn't want us to know the real story? That was an interesting, and I tried to get them both on Art Bell at the same time with a proctor, and so we could find out exactly who knew what and who didn't know what. Sitchin's crew would not allow him to go on program at all.
Really?
Yeah, no, that was a mess. So my point is that I'm all about evidence and what the truth of the matter is. And when the fact is that whenever you talk about the ancient ones that came down to earth, he's like he says from heaven, the heaven and so on. The Hebrew version of that is a little more succinct. Basically, there was a war. Somebody got kicked out. They weren't asked to leave. They were booted out with a number 12 boot, so to speak. And the question one might ask is, well, if that happened, if somebody kicked you out of, let's say, terminated your rent, right, forever, you might be interested in going after whatever it is that was kind of precious to them. And this planet seems to be a particular project that was very important to the ones that kicked him out. The point being that if that's either of those two stories are true and they both are kind of side by side, you can pick out whatever flavor you want to buy into or not, or make up one if you like. But the fact is that whoever came down here came here with a very specific intent of not being man's best friend. In fact, the first time you read of a quote unquote reptile alien, reptile model, he's walking into the Garden of Eden in the 3rd chapter of Genesis.
Really? Is that the snake?
Serpent walked in and spoke to her, he's standing upright, and I mean, there he is.
Wow. You know what? That makes sense. That really makes sense.
It really does.
So let's go back to your actual abduction. You say you remember this and going to the wall. Did you actually walk through the wall with the alien?
No, all I remembered from my very first event there at age 4 or so was simply that of him leaving. He had already brought me back, put me in bed. Now, of course, I know this because I've got 1,950 cases worldwide, and I've literally investigated thousands of cases. But what we know is that they're bringing you back, basically putting you back in bed and everything, so that you won't remember. The problem is I have a propensity to wake up when I sense something is incorrect or wrong in the room. And I did, just as he was leaving. And then that's when he said, it's awake. He realized he had made a mistake. Now he's got to fix the problem. How do you make a little kid, not remember what the event was? Well, you make them either have a bad dream or install something else. So what he did at that point, and I was not afraid. I was not terrified. I didn't know what he was. And no one knew anything about aliens back in 1952 anyway. Nobody had a clue. So I'm sitting there looking at him, and all of a sudden, something in his eye moved. There was some type of movement in his eye that I could see, because there's a little bit of an ambient light in the room from our little well house. It was outside, lit up the room enough that I could see him very clearly. And all of a sudden, I became paralyzed, and that was the first time in my entire life I'd ever felt anything like it. It was not any fear that I ever had or ever experienced at all. And it took me years to figure out in studying this phenomenon that he transferred his fear to me.
So his fear of being caught.
They live in great fear in their society.
Really?
We try to place human values on their society as if, well, they live in an advanced society and they know all kinds of neat stuff, and this is what it's really like. No, it's not really like that at all. And this guy lives in horror. And it's like a drug when they transfer their fear to you. It paralyzes you and terrifies you and all kinds of, it occupies you so he can do what he wants to do. But it's like a drug for him because he no longer has his fear for that time.
Oh, okay.
So when then he came toward me, and of course I was really shaken at that point.
I'm sure.
I pushed my little bed, which is a little cot, and I pushed my little bed apart and from the wall, because I was so scared, and I fell down between the bed and so I'm literally wedged between the bed and the wall. My head's bounced off the floor, and my covers are all wrapped around my arms. I can't get loose. And then it's a nightmare of every child. He lifts up the bed covers on the other side of the bed, and lifts them up and sticks his large bulbous head with those large, perfectly round black eyes right next to my face. And he begins to do something rather strange. He did not shapeshift, because I don't think that's what they do. What he did was change my perception of who he was. And he changed my perception of him into a horrific clown, and that this was going to be my screen memory, in effect, my bad dream, so that he didn't exist and he was never there. And I kept shaking my little head back and forth, yelling, no, 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 because I wanted to remember him for what he was, not for what he wanted me to think he was.
Wow. Now I'm gonna show a picture. This is probably Hollywood's version, but I just want to see if this is even similar. Is that similar except the eyes itself?
The eyes are obviously incorrect. The mouth is too thick. It's a very little tiny thin line, little tiny holes where the nose was, and very skinny, very spindly. It looked like the skinniest scarecrow you ever saw without clothes. It was very strange, very strange.
So, okay, why do you think you had the ability to remember even after he, tried to mind manipulate you?
Well, two reasons. One is he didn't do a very good job.
So
Number two
he
is
got fired.
if you study these guys for 38 years and have a lot of experiences and a lot of work in this area, you learn a lot of things about them. One of the things I've learned is that this particular version, the smallest little gray they have, has an IQ of approximately 80. No wonder they make so many mistakes. They put your clothes on inside out, backwards, and sometimes someone else's clothes on you when they bring you back. No wonder you question that something happened.
So I have a question actually from the chat room. We have people, since we're live. Margot asked, "Can they infiltrate dreams?" Can they
infiltrate dreams? That's kind of a hypnotic question as well. And one time, my wife and I were teaching hypnotherapy, and someone in the room asked the question, "Can you hypnotize someone without their permission?" And I said, yes. My wife said, no, at the same time. And then she looked at me and we shouldn't be washing our laundry here in front of everybody. She said, I don't think so. And I said, I think so. And of course, I was wanting to teach her a particular lesson. And then she said, well, Derrel, could you give us an illustration of that? And I said, of course. And I said, you had a car accident recently. And she said, yes, I did. And I said, it injured your back, your neck, and you've been having these back pain and headaches and all. She said, yes. And I looked at her and smiled and said, how do you feel today? And her face turned red as a beet. And I said, as you go to sleep. So here's your answer to the question, young lady, Margot. As she went to sleep, when you go to sleep, just before you hit sleep, when you wake and go to sleep, you're in a hypnagogic state in which you're already in trance. Everybody goes into trance at least 2 times a day. Right. Everybody. And at that time, this is the perfect time for mommies to put their children to sleep and sing lullabies to them. It makes the most wonderful memories of mom because it literally, it's a suggestion and they're accepting it 100%. And my wife got better as a result of my interfering, not asking permission. And I said, so why would I want to wake you up and ask permission? Can I help work with you? Whenever all I need to do is allow you to go to sleep, rest, get a good sleep, and I can help you anyway. So yes, you can invade someone's dreams. You can interfere with them. I actually teach a class on lucid dreaming where we get into a bit of that. But yes, the alien can do that. But often the alien will actually take you and while you're asleep, and he'll go ahead and start creating his own dream with you.
Really?
And he installs that dream. Sometimes it's an end time scenario and this sort of thing. And you think you're dreaming, but it's not really your dream. It's his.
I find that fascinating, in fact, to be able to kind of get into the mind of the alien, which is usually the reversal. So I find that fascinating that you kind of really got into their mind as much as they got into yours. So that's fascinating.
Well, there's 2 answers to that. The number one is that you're correct in your assumption, and it's an astute observation on your part, in my view. And second, we actually put together. I say we. I'm the alien hunter. I didn't get the name because somebody thought that was a lot of fun. Yeah. Some journalist one day said, "Oh my God, you hunt them?
Yeah.
You're the alien hunter."
You wanted it in a card game.
Yeah, something like that. So, but I do. I hunt them that hunted me, and later came and hunted my son. When they came after my son, that changed the world for me, and now I hunt them. And so they're on the 10 most wanted list for me right now, at least the top 7. So, but the fact is, we did a specialized program where I installed some information in a woman contactee. And long story short, that information was damning, in my opinion, if it were true. And it apparently was, because they were so upset. They sent several small craft to pick up 8 of our abductees in 2 states and several cities, and took everybody to a massive craft, approximately 50 miles thick and 600 miles across. And 2 hotshot guys who are not in the normal UFO phenomena showed up sitting in the big chair, and all the quote unquote aliens, the 7 flavors, the reptile, the the praying mantis and all the others.
Right.
We're standing there scared to death. This Nordic, all of them were standing there scared to death of the big guy sitting in the chair. He was asking questions, and he wanted to know how I did what I did, why I did it, and all kinds of fascinating things that you wouldn't think that aliens would ask questions about. One of the two questions he asked was fascinating. One of them was an intelligence question about our intelligence community. What was Project Prometheus, which was a government project to steal technology from the alien. And the second, two other questions they asked were fascinating. They produced an image of a human brain, and they asked the two abductees to point to the human soul and the human spirit. They thought they were lodged in the brain somewhere, and they want to know where they're at and how to get to them.
Wow.
They didn't know. Forget the alien. These guys are above them. And there's a hierarchy that most people don't have a clue about on the alien phenomena. And people are so busy listening to UFO stories and stuff, you're missing the big story. The headliner is somebody out there hatched, cloned, manufactured, made these guys to interact with you for some specific reason. Don't you want to know why?
I agree with you. I agree with you. I remember once my mother and her friend, and we from a small town in Kansas, and they wanted to do an experiment where they started a lie about each other, and they just wanted to see how it changed, as you know, like we all do. We've heard it, how it changed and how it got back to them after they tell friends and tell friends and tell friends. And I think this is really kind of the same situation. I agree with that. I never thought about that. I create objects to distract you from the true reason why we're here.
Well, my past is in the intelligence community. And one of the things we did, and I'm not much of a conspiracist. I know conspiracies do exist, but by and large, a lot of them are explainable to some reasonable degree. But in the intelligence community, we created our own conspiracies to keep you away from the real conspiracy that we were really fathering to begin with. And that's called now in the UFO phenomenon, it's called a screen memory, which means it's a lie. It's something that never really happened, but the idea is to make you believe it did happen, and therefore that's the truth. In the intelligence community, it's called a cover story.
Right. Wow, this is you are. I've interviewed a lot of people that in the alien expert field and ufology, and you are a unique man when it comes to your philosophies and your research.
Well, nobody's perfect.
I know, right? Well, except for at least my mom says that I am, but I don't know if that's true or not.
That's pretty much true if you're from Kansas.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so I'm curious. Back in 1952, is that when you said, or no? Well, you were born in 52. So is this like 19?
Born in 48.
48. Okay, so at that time, when you let's say the next morning, most kids would be like, "Mom and Dad, I had a crazy dream," or "This happened." How long was it that you actually realized? I mean, you may have realized that from that point on that this was real, but how did the reaction of your family take this news of what the encounter? Because I'm curious. I mean, because back in the day, like you said, back in the day is not like we have Ancient Aliens on TV right now. So most people are like, oh, okay.
The fact is that my mother just found out a few years ago.
Really?
She saw me on TV.
That's funny.
I mean, I know you do all the alien research and the surgeries and all these amazing things and finding evidence. But Derrel, that man said you were an abductee. Well, that's just not true. I said, well, yeah, actually, kind of it is. Well, why did you never tell us? I said, you see that boo rattly look on your face right now?
That's hilarious.
I was not going to listen to that at 4 or 5 years old. You had this terrible, terrible dream. You just go right back to bed. You didn't know what you're talking about.
Right.
I was so upset. I never told them what the problem was, that they did something that never happened. They put me between them the next night in bed. My dad and my mom said, well, I don't remember that. And I said, Mama, you sleep like this. And I described her. And she, with her arm up like she does. And my dad sleeps on his right side. And she said, how do you know that? And I said, because I was sleeping between the two of you. And I woke up. I sensed something wrong again. And I instantly woke up, felt the same presence I did the night
They
before.
came back.
There were two of them standing there. The same cosmic skinhead that got me the night before, and some other cosmic skinhead just like him. And it's amazing to me, and I don't know how we can do it, but I could pick out my little keeper, my little handler. If there were 90 million of them out there, I could spot him in an instant.
Really? So they're that recognizable?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look, according to Hollywood, all of them pretty much look the same. So that's
They do. They do look the same for the most part. But the fact is that when someone gets into your consciousness,
mm-hmm.
and I've also returned the favor because I figured out how to get inside their headspace too. And I've had some of my abductees do the same thing, those that wanted to. And my point in doing that is to show, number one, that they're not as smart as you think they are. As long as you're in the awe
mm-hmm.
modality or the fear modality, you belong to them.
Well, okay.
On your show, you don't get to do anything. But if you can keep them occupied with one of those two goofy notions, mm-hmm. and do some other things besides that, you become a trained observer for the first time in your life.
So how many times have you been abducted?
About 10 times over the period of 13 years.
That's okay. So why do you think they stopped?
They stopped violently. My events ended violently one night when I was 17 years old. Mm-hmm. My room was next to my mom and dad. They never heard a thing. I assure you they should have, because I call it nuking the house. And sometimes they do a whole neighborhood this way. Even if you go outside, you won't even hear crickets, birds, or anything.
Right.
Nothing. It's like everything gets shut off. So when they nuke a whole area, but it doesn't work on everybody. It works on almost everybody. That's why you'll hear some old guy about 3 o'clock in the morning, well, I was out taking a smoke and I saw this UFO over your house. That sort of thing. It didn't work on him, but it worked on everybody else. Well, it certainly worked on my parents, because these particular 5 entities that came into my room that night, 2 of them kicked the door in, and it was an old style square, very heavy lock on the door. They're absolutely ancient old door. Mm-hmm. And broke the hinge, clean off the hinge. They broke the lock off the door, and it fell on the floor. Now that would wake up pretty much anybody real quick. In fact, whenever it happened, I was sitting up in the bed with my eyes as big as saucers, because I was freaked completely out and wondered, what in the world, what is this? And there was a very bright light in the hallway, and these 2 entities came in and retrieved me from the bed very rapidly. These 5 entities do not show up in UFO literature anywhere. My point of the whole thing is I'd like to convey to your audience tonight, and I hope that they hear this if they don't hear anything else. These entities, the quote unquote 7 flavors of aliens that we're looking at, are probably not aliens at all. They're in fact hatched, cloned, constructed, manufactured to the point of interaction with mankind for someone else's benefit. And for whatever purposes. You can dream up some of your own or do the investigations and find out what some of them are. But the fact is that there is a hierarchy that's much higher than them. And these guys were some of them. And they came there specifically to put this show to a stop. Really? And I've never described who they were, what they did, or anything like that, because in our policing work, as an example, in investigative work, we always keep facts and things out from people. Mm-hmm. But I've had a dozen people come up and tell me, oh, I know all about that. Let me tell you, and they start describing all this BS is what it is, because none of it happened. And they say, yeah, that happened to me too. And look, and I ask them all kinds of details, none of which they can fill in because they don't have a clue. They made it all up. But I have found 8 people in my lifetime who have had a similar experience with this one particular entity that was in charge. And those 8 people, their lives were forever changed, ruined, and in some cases left emotionally, if not psychologically damaged for the rest of their lives.
So you were just a hamster in an experiment that did you ever find any markings on yourself or implantations that in your body at all, or no?
Well, thank you for asking.
Well, you're very welcome.
The answer to that is a yes on both counts. First of all, when I went to the VA hospital, when I started finally going to the VA hospital after I finally started to trust them for a little while,
For a little while.
before they lost my records for a year. But anyway,
The VA? No.
One of the doctors there asked me how I felt the second visit, and I said, "Okay, something's supposed to be wrong." And he said, "Well," he said, I said, "I've got a little bit of pain here on this one side." And he said, "No, your broken ribs are on the other side." I said, "I don't have any broken ribs." Now, I knew that I was damaged at age 17, but I never told anybody.
Right.
What he found in his x-rays, without me knowing it, was he found the broken rib cage where I was damaged. And one lady said, "But you don't understand. They healed you." I said, "No, sweetie. You're the one that doesn't get it." I said, "They covered up the mistake by repairing me so that I wouldn't be." I said, "If you ever had a cracked rib or a bruised rib, you move in slow motion. You ever have broken ribs? You don't move at all.
Mm-hmm.
You'll pass out if you move in a certain direction." And I said, "The fact is, my ribs were quote unquote repaired by the next morning."
Really?
The
That's
question is,
crazy.
who did that and for what, to what end?
Right.
So another case, an ENT looked at me later and he said, "Where'd you get that?" He said that your inside of your nasal septum is cut. They got a large hole cut completely between the bone that comes all the way down to your nose. It's solid there. Well,
Right.
there's a cut in mine. It's big as your finger. He said, "When did you have the operation?" And I said, "What operation?" Of course, I knew what he was talking about, but I never told him. Anyway, long story short, the answer to that real question, when did that happen, was when I was 12 years old, where they cut a hole in my nasal passage, because I was taken in another event. This one was on 1305 Ohio Street in Alamogordo, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the event well, went outside just like I was instructed to do, and like the movie Phenomenon, where you saw the bright light,
Right.
you couldn't figure out what it was, and it kind of looked like bigger than a planet, and Mars was out there. It's beautiful, Venus, beautiful. Clear night, but there was a bigger light up there in the horizon, and it came toward me so fast. The next thing I know is I woke up inside a circular room. Was it a flying saucer? I don't know, but it was inside a circular room with a very bright light on above me. That's one of the reasons abductees have phobias of dentists, and especially that bright light they put over you when they say, "I'm going to lay you back right now."
Right.
You feel uncomfortable. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I really do. It's not your light that bothers me, but it's one that was like that. So, and while I had my feet elevated about 11 degrees, laying in this bright light, I could overhear the cosmic skinhead that got me, the same old one, talking to his boss, a doctor type who looks just like him but taller. And this one has an IQ of about 140, 145.
Wow.
A lot smarter.
So like me. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. So in that circumstance, they didn't realize they'll shut you down a lot of times. They'll say something like psychically or mentally, now you can't hear anything. And well, I'll just turn myself right back on. Yes, I can. I don't accept the suggestion. People don't know you can do that.
I was going to say, somebody else in the chat room says, "What can we do in effort not to be manipulated by aliens?" So you're just saying it's the free will of saying, "No, you're not going to."
Well, it is free will that we can say that, but it takes more than that to get it done, because free will is not enough, because these guys are extremely effective. If you get past the little cosmic skinhead, wait till his boss shows up.
Yeah.
This guy's a lot better than he is. He's got an IQ about 140, 150, and he's going to be a lot smarter. So you're going to have to outsmart him on another level. So I agree with the person making the statement. And yes, there are things you can do. You can email me at alienhunter.org. Click on the Alien Hunter, and I will be glad to send you all kinds of self-defense things that you can do all by yourself.
Well, that's good.
And the cost for this great service is free.
So you've already put this together for people that may be fearful of being abducted or have already been abducted and they're still coming back. So
Well, most people are not going to be alien hunters. They can't hunt them that hunted them
Right, right.
or their kids. They can't do that. They don't know how. And I suspect if you think that you can, you better get a helmet because you're going to need one. But the fact is that there are things that you can do and be proactive for yourself and for your children if you choose to.
Well, just because of time, because I could talk to you for like 4 hours. I mean, this time's going fast. So I want to move forward because so the last time was not when you were 17. From the time you're 17 until your son was born, is that when you went into the military and you were a CIA operative?
I went into the military. I worked in Central Agency as a martial arts instructor, weapons instructor there, and worked in covert ops for 2 years. And spent a year in Korea. Was activated back in the United States military. Spent a year as a senior military police officer in Korea. Came back and got married to my lovely wife. Been married to her for 47 years.
Congrats.
Well, she's deaf, dumb, and blind. She's never seen me, never heard me, and if she had, we'd probably be divorced.
Right? Yeah. They're like, we can correct her vision. No, don't do that, please. Yeah.
That'd be an instant divorce.
Right, right. So during that time, I mean, you've had the experience. Was there any other like visual encounters? I mean, was this in the back of your mind, or was it the actual abduction of your son that really kind of brought this in full circle and really got you, like you said, hunting them?
When I moved to Alamogordo, I moved to Houston, Texas, to do building here with my dad, and then I later moved out to a place called Meyer Road off of 1485. Some of your audience will know where that's at because it's right down the street was the famous Cash Landrum case. We were living on Meyer Road, just a few miles from the Cash Landrum case when it happened. So I woke up in the middle of the night, again, felt something horrifically wrong, and I knew exactly the feeling. I knew exactly who was there. And I woke up, I got up out of the bed, I ran as fast as I could. I ran past my son's room because I knew he wasn't in there. And I knew my daughter, they had not taken her. I went into the kitchen, and there he was standing in a deep trance looking out the dining room window. I watched him for quite a while. And my wife walks in and looks at me, looks at him, looks at me, and says, "What's going on?" Because I had never bothered to tell her. So now I have to explain why my son's standing there in deep trance. And I asked him what he was looking at. And he said, the little red light. Of course, there is no red light. That's the screen memory. The fact is that was a technique used to control him so that he would not remember his event. And I looked at him and I said, "David, I want you to go back to bed now and go into a deep sleep." So he goes in there and goes into sleep. And unbeknownst to me, my son was so mortified by the event that he rigged up a bow and arrow with a large broadhead arrow that's used to kill deer, as an example, or wild hogs. Rigged it up and aimed it toward his door. He could have killed any of us if we'd ever walked in there at night. He thought that might defend him against them again. Problem with my son's event, what made me so angry wasn't that they got him. It's who got him.
What do you
remember
mean
the character I told you about in my last event?
Right.
He was there.
Oh, so he was kind of.
Hey, it's on now.
Yeah.
You mess with me, I'm a big guy. I can take it. I'll live with it.
Mm-hmm.
You mess with my children, and I'll come after you, and I will never leave you alone. I will hunt you down, and you're on the big wanted list right now. The 10 most wanted, 7. Well, it'd be 7, 8, 9, 2, 5. So it'd be 12 of them. 12 on the 12 most wanted list right now.
So what? I'm going to ask this: what makes you not afraid? Because again, we're thinking, their technology is way advanced. They have weapons. They have mental abilities we don't. What made you think that thought that you could actually go against and win against these?
Well, it's a great question, and I can't answer this in truthfulness without going back to the initial statement. They were hats cloned, made, manufactured by someone who came from somewhere else. Well, if they got kicked out of this place called heaven, then they're under some kind of authority.
Right.
They may be running a show like whatever they want and doing whatever they want. But if that story is true, then there is some degree of protection that we have out there that we may not have been using or even or understand in any way, shape, or form. So instead of spending your time reading ancient Sumerian, you might want to read Hebrew or Greek or simply plain English and a biblical version of that. You might get a better clue of what to do, or you might not. Hey, roll the dice and think for yourself. Do whatever you want to do. But for me, it was pretty obvious that this guy's intentions were not in any way good and all. And I do not think that aliens are demons or anything like that. There is no evidence for that whatsoever. That is a different phenomena. It has a different signature. It is different as night and day. Aliens, ghosts, angels, and demonics all have different signatures. They're as different as night and day. And if you don't know the difference, then you're going to get real confused by all this and say, well, it's all of that. The reason you say that's because you're not informed.
Right. And I think the everyday person probably thinks that way. It does get very overwhelming. Because we do. I mean, even as a host, and I've interviewed a lot of people in this field that there's a lot of different stories. Everybody has their own, their own examples, their own examples of their either encounters or just what they believe. So yeah, it's a lot of information that's thrown at people. So. Margot, thank you for another question, but you kind of answered it. She said, "Is there a higher IQ, or are there aliens higher IQs than the boss alien?" So I'm assuming, like you said, that the ones that actually created them, I'm sure, are
much higher, much smarter. Mm-hmm. That's true. But even in the alien phenomena, the insectoid, the praying mantis, we actually have a photograph of him, by the way, in an abduction account, a gray alien and the praying mantis type insectoid. The fact is, he's got an IQ of probably 180.
Wow.
He is extremely intelligent.
And I don't know. I'm just throwing a picture up there. This is, just what I pulled off the internet. But how we like to enhance everything. Sure. But I've heard that the praying mantis are very, very intelligent. And so. We were talking earlier before the show about government agencies such as SETI. I've had somebody from the Smithsonian that's talking about even astronauts. That say they've never seen anything. I don't believe it. SETI, the head of SETI that I interviewed, was like, oh, I don't really believe it, but because I've never seen it. Until I see it, I don't believe it. Why do you think our government? And I hope I'm not getting too conspiracy theory on you, but I'm just curious on what your thoughts. But why do you think our government, who I feel that has the information of what you're talking about, but why do you think that they don't share that with us?
Well, first of all, let's clear up the statement, the quote unquote government. The government doesn't have a clue.
They don't.
The only thing the governments are good for is
collecting taxes.
They're going to fix your roads at election time and taxing you whenever they can.
Right.
They don't have a clue. The question is, who does have a clue? And the ones that have a clue is the Office of Naval Investigations and several other interactive agencies at a very specific level. They are, in fact, the breakaway space agency.
Really?
Of course. And where do you think your money in your black budgets is going? Do you actually think it's because we need to spy on a few more Russians out there or whatever?
No. Not at all.
Stuff hidden that we've already found that, and I'm not a conspiracist. I'm just telling you, there is so much a volume of data out there on this, and so many people that I've talked to that are in the know who happen to be abductees and made a huge mistake by calling me. One guy called me off of a massive radio program I was on one night, and I told him the next day when he called, I said, I know who you are. I know what you do. Please get off the phone immediately.
Wow.
You're going to lose your career, and you may spend some time being visited by people you wished didn't visit you.
The Men in Black.
He said, I need help. And it breaks my heart not to help him.
Right.
I said, you still don't get it. I said, they don't. He said, do you think they're listening to me? I said, I don't think it's you they're listening to. I said, they listen to me to find out who I'm speaking to. Mm-hmm. I'm not important, but you are.
That makes sense.
You don't want me on your mailing list, so to speak.
Right. Well, I'm curious. you're as an investigator, but you became a hypnotherapist, and it sounds like you've mastered this for abductees. Was that your purpose, was to become a hypnotherapist for the abductees, or was that just something that you really wanted to do as a career?
Well, my daughter asked this question. She doesn't like this phenomena at all.
Probably
She's
not.
not an abductee, but she has seen some fascinating. I've got some fascinating information from her.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, she said, "Why do you do this, Dad?" And I said, "Because I seem to be able to do it better than most people out there." I said, "The fact is, I understand the alien inside and out. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you, 38 years, you can't figure somebody out and you've been around them for a long period of time, then you're either dumber than a bag of hammers or you're just dense."
Hey, don't look at me.
And yeah, so I mean, if you can get in their headspace, you'll learn a lot about these guys. And if you then you know how to do investigations at that point, and you're not just looking for, well, let me tell me about your bright light you saw. I don't really care about your bright light you saw and
Right.
these things. I care about the kind of evidence they left on you, in you, or around you, and what it meant, what the story. In other words, there's a difference between, and this is awful to have to use this illustration, but it's true, and I'm just going to do it anyway. When a police officer on the street, so to speak, sees a crime and he can't figure it out, he goes to a detective.
Right.
Detectives take it over. When the detectives get to a point they can't figure out, like a serial killer is an example, and they can't figure this guy out, they go to what is called a profiler.
Mm-hmm.
A profiler looks at them kind of like the cop looks at the UFO investigator, kind of like, you've got a few screws loose. Right. And he looks at them because he realized they don't have a clue. Right. That profiler will look at the cuts, bruises, burns, scars, or whatever on these bodies, and he can tell you a lot about the guy who did it, probably his age, his makeup, psychological makeup, what he does, why he does what he does, and he'll develop an MO on this individual and a bunch of other things as well. My point is that we can do this with the alien as well. I can look at pictures, cuts, bruises, scars, and things, and these things. I can often tell you who did it and why, or why they used a surrogate to do it, and the purpose for it, like why they sexually seduce women and men, mm-hmm. and yet they have no genitalia. They didn't do it for themselves.
Right.
I told one lady, she was crying about it, and I said, "Young lady," I said, "I'm going to tell you what I haven't told anybody else. I think of him as a recording device. That's right. Going to get played back for someone else.
Right.
Your terrors, your fears, your horrific fear, all these things are just a drug to someone else who enjoys it."
So do you think that this is not really an experiment, but it really is the experience? They're wanting our experience, not necessarily the experiment of our anatomy, because they've been doing this.
The experiment. Look, if you're in DNA, any kind of DNA work or biology, and you can't figure something out within a few simple DNA tests,
that's what I'm saying.
It's taking you 1,000 years to do it.
Right.
That's called a ruse. This is the kind of stuff you give to useful idiots, because they're going to take that and say, "See there, they've got some more experiments to do on us for another 5,000 years."
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, you need to go back and take that hammer and keep banging on your head, because something is not working real well.
Wow. So
no, that business is over. That's the ruse. That's the red herring given to people, and there's several of them in the UFO world. And I guarantee it's not about experience. Dr. Ballet gave one of the best answers for this I ever saw. He said the medical work that's and the medical procedures done on these people, he said, is, in my opinion, and this is not a religious man, by the way, he said, in my opinion, is tantamount to the stories that you hear in ancient times of things, demonic things that were done to people. He said, nobody with any medical expertise reads these stories and says, "Oh my goodness, why that was a great procedure they did on you." Really? And left a horrific scar on you, and well, but they put an implant in you. They left it so visible everybody in the world could see it. Mm-hmm. How do you think I find this stuff? We've done 25 surgeries today, and by the way, we do this stuff free. We don't charge these people any money. We're not in the money making business. I've got a couple of books, but that's the only thing it pays for gas, so to speak, to drive around. The point is that this is a philanthropic effort, and I'm not in. I know what's happened to these people, and if they get it and they're wanting to figure out some things, I'll help them with it. If they don't get it and want to buy into the screen memory and think their aliens are here to save the planet, fix the ozone hole, and a few other things they haven't done in the last 6 or 7, 10,000 years, Well, go ahead and buy some more of that swampland they're selling, because they got a bunch more of it.
Well, we only have about 2 minutes left. I can't believe this hours went by, but we have to talk about this, and you're going to come back. I mean, I hope you accept my invitation, because I want Captain Ron here too, because he would love you as much as I'm enjoying this. But this was just released, UFO Magazine India, Ancient and Indian Cosmology. Well, I'm trying to read this. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. Why Ancient Aliens Theories Are Wrong. So tell us a little bit about this that was just released.
Well, actually, Hitesh, the writer of the magazine there, that publishes articles in there as well, started this after I went to India to do an implant surgery. And while I was there, he was so impressed with my answers. He was stunned when I went around and started explaining the cosmology of India in non-religious Hindu terms, but in alien terms.
Right.
And it hit him like a ton of bricks. He said, "Oh my gosh, we're all wrong." I said, "It appears that way."
Well, Derrel, will you come back, please? I don't have.
I'm like a staph infection. I'll just keep coming back over and over.
No, this was so fascinating, and I loved the way you think, and because you've been there, you've lived it, and unfortunately your son had to go through it too, and the people that you've worked with through hypnotherapy and the things you've seen in the last 38 years, we have to have you back and have another hour with you. So everybody go to alienhunter.org. This is Derrel Sims. Do you have any upcoming events that people might be, like workshop or speaking engagements that you're going to be at?
Well, if you're anywhere around Houston, you go to the Houston UFO Network on meetup.com and just join it anyway. Just go to meetup.com and type in Houston UFO Network. Just email me and I'll send you the stuff. And join. It's fun. It's you'll learn a lot of things about us. So if you're in Houston, you can come visit us there. If you're not, I'll be in Aurora, Texas. I'll be keynoting the event in September, I believe it is. I just finished a conference down in South Texas, and I'll be back there again this year. They were very impressed. So I guess I must have done something right.
I don't know how. No, I'm just kidding.
You make mistakes. You know?
I know. Well, thank you so much, and I always give this because it's just, I love canned applause. I just do. But Derrel Sims, please come back, and we hope everybody enjoyed it. The people that were in the chat room leaving comments, they loved you, and again, and next time we'll have Captain Ron in the house. You're listening to Truth Be Told right here on Universal Broadcasting Network. Please go to our website, truthbetoldwebtv.com. Check out our YouTube channel and subscribe, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you, and check out all of our upcoming guests. We have some great stuff coming up. We're going to be at Contact in the Desert in 2 weeks, so we'll be interviewing live from there. It's going to be a great time. So until then, we'll see you next time.